In 1954, the average American farm kitchen held more than 200 tools, and almost none of them plugged into a wall. There was a can of bacon grease that never once hit the trash, a cabinet that practically baked its own bread, and a stove that heated the entire house while it cooked Sunday dinner. Today, you could not find half these things outside a museum or your grandmother's attic. Number 14 sat in nearly every farmhouse in America, yet you would struggle to name it now. And number 1 was the beating heart of the home, the single object the whole kitchen was built around, gone so completely that most people under 50 have never even seen one work. Let's count down 30 things every farm kitchen had in the 1950s that almost no one owns anymore. Starting with number 30. Number 30, the tin match holder. Screwed to the wall right beside the cook stove hung a little stamped tin box, often decorated with a crowing rooster or a sheaf of wheat and a single word, matches. Inside lived a fistful of strike-anywhere matches, kept bone dry by that warm spot near the stove. Those matches lit the morning fire, the kerosene lamp, and Grandpa's pipe, and a whole box cost barely a nickel at the hardware store. The farm wife refilled it without thinking, the way we plug in a phone today. When pilot lights and electric ignition arrived in the 1960s, the holder lost its job overnight. The little tin box rusted in a drawer, then disappeared, taking a whole morning ritual with it. Number 29, the string holder. By the kitchen door hung a heavy ball of butcher's twine, often nested inside a cast iron holder shaped like a cat or a sleepy Scottish terrier with the string fed out through its mouth. Nothing came pre-bagged in 1953. Every parcel from the butcher and the dry goods store arrived tied with string, and that string was never thrown away. It was unknotted, smoothed, and wound back onto the ball to tie up roasts, bundle herbs, or truss a chicken. A good holder might have come free with a feed order or cost a quarter at the 5 and dime. When plastic bags and tape took over, the ball of twine slowly unwound into history. Number 28, the wall salt box. Mounted near the stove sat a small hinged lid box, sometimes wood, more often glazed stoneware with the word salt arching across the front in blue script. Steam and damp turned table salt into a brick, so the farm wife kept hers in that wall box where the stove's heat held the moisture at bay, and she pinched it out by hand as she cooked. A stoneware salt box ran maybe 35 cents from the Sears catalog. Free-flowing salt in a cardboard cylinder with a pouring spout made the wall box pointless almost the moment it appeared. Today the boxes sell as country antiques, their original purpose forgotten by the people who hang them. Number 27, sad irons. Long before a cord ran to the ironing board, the farm wife pressed shirts with heavy, solid iron wedges called sad irons, sad being the old word for solid and heavy. She owned 3 or 4, set them on the hot cook stove to warm, and clipped a detachable wooden handle onto whichever one was ready, working fast before it cooled and swapping it for the next. A set cost around $1 and lasted a lifetime. On ironing day, the kitchen turned into a furnace, the irons hissing against dampened cotton. When electric irons reached rural homes through the 1950s, those iron wedges became doorstops, and nobody ever missed the scorched knuckles. Number 26, the hand crank coffee mill. Bolted to the counter or cradled in the lap sat a small wooden box with an iron crank on top and a tiny drawer below. Whole roasted beans went in the hopper, and somebody, usually a child earning their keep, turned the handle until the drawer filled with fragrant grounds for the morning percolator. The smell of fresh cracked coffee was the first thing that filled a farm kitchen at 5 in the morning. A mill cost about $1.50 and never wore out. When grocers began selling coffee pre-ground in vacuum cans, the grinding stopped, and with it went one of the warmest smells a kitchen ever knew. Number 25. The nutmeg grater and spice tins. On the shelf stood a row of little tins, and tucked among them a tiny tin grater no bigger than a finger, holding a few whole nutmegs that rattled when you shook it. Ground spice lost its punch in weeks, so the thrifty farm wife grated her nutmeg fresh over rice pudding and custard, a few strokes at a time. A handful of whole nutmegs cost a dime and lasted a year. The whole arrangement spoke of a time when nothing was bought in excess and everything was used to the last grain. Pre-ground spice jars made the little grater a curiosity, and most got tossed without a second thought. Number 24. The PIE bird. Poking up through the crust of a bubbling fruit pie stood a small ceramic bird, usually a blackbird, with its beak open to the sky. It was no decoration. The hollow bird vented steam from the filling so the pie did not boil over and turn the oven floor into a sticky mess, and it held the top crust up off the fruit so it baked crisp instead of soggy. A pie bird cost about $1 and sat in the cupboard between Sundays. As frozen and store-bought pies filled the new supermarket freezers, the little singing bird fell silent, surviving today only on the shelves of collectors who barely know what it did. Number 23. The wire potato masher. Not the flat plate kind we know, but a sturdy loop of heavy waved wire fixed to a turned wooden handle. Boiled potatoes went into a heavy crockery bowl, and the farm wife pressed and twisted until they turned to clouds, no lumps allowed at a farm table. The same masher crushed beans, squash, and apples for sauce. It cost a dime, never broke, and felt right in the hand after 20 years of Sunday dinners. Electric mixers and instant flakes in a box made it unnecessary, and the wire masher went the way of so many simple, perfect tools, replaced by something that needed a plug. Number 22. The glass reamer. Sitting in the windowsill was a heavy pressed glass dish with a ridged cone rising from its center and a spout on one side. Half a lemon or orange pressed and twisted over that cone gave up every drop of juice, while the seeds and pulp stayed behind in the moat. The farm wife reached for it, making lemonade for the haying crew or a lemon meringue for the church social. A glass reamer cost a dime and doubled as a pretty thing in the light. Cartons of juice from the store and squeeze bottles of concentrate ended its run, and the cheerful glass cone now lives mostly in antique booths. Number 21. The tin bread box. On the counter sat a roomy tin box with a roll top or hinged door, painted cream with a red stripe or stenciled with wheat. Bread was baked at home or bought as an unwrapped loaf, and it went stale fast in dry farmhouse air, so the bread box kept 4 or 5 loaves soft and out of reach of flies and mice. A good box ran around $1 and lasted decades. The smell that escaped when you lifted the lid was the smell of the whole kitchen. When sliced bread arrived, sealed in waxed paper and plastic, the bread box, slowly emptied, kept around for nostalgia long after it stopped being needed. Number 20. The egg basket and egg scale. Hanging by the back door was a wire basket for gathering eggs, and on the counter sat a small balance scale with a sliding weight that sorted those eggs by size, peewee, small, medium, large, and the prized extra large. EGGs were money on a farm, traded at the country store for sugar and coffee, and the grater cost a fair price wholesale, so the farm wife weighed every one before it went to town. The clink of eggs settling in the wire basket meant morning chores were done. Cartoned, factory-graded eggs made home sorting pointless, and the little scales vanished along with the hens out back. Number 19. The cherry pitter. Clamped to the table edge sat a small cast-iron contraption with a hopper and a plunger. Drop a cherry in, push the lever, and a metal pin punched the pit out clean, dropping the fruit ready for PIE. With a cherry tree in nearly every farmyard, July meant hours of pitting, and the gadget turned a whole afternoon's misery into a steady, satisfying rhythm. It cost about 50 cents and stained your fingers red for a week. Canned pie filling and pitted frozen fruit erased the need entirely. The cherry pitter now turns up at estate sales, its purpose a mystery to half the people who pick it up. Number 18. The apple peeler. Bolted to the kitchen table stood a marvel of cast iron, a hand-cranked machine that speared a whole apple on a fork and, with a few turns, peeled it, cored it, and sliced it into a perfect spiral. Fall meant bushels of apples bound for pies, sauce, and drying, and this little engine made the work fly while the kids fought over who got to crank. It cost about $1 and lasted generations. The long ribbons of peel went to the pigs, nothing wasted. As orchards gave way to grocery aisles and applesauce came in a jar, the iron peeler stopped turning and faded into the attic. Number 17. The clamp-on meat grinder. No farm kitchen was without the heavy cast iron grinder that screwed onto the edge of the table, its wide mouth fed by hand and its crank turned with real muscle. Tough cuts and trimmings went in and came out as hamburger, sausage, or the filling for a hash. After hog butchering day, that grinder ran for hours. A good one cost $1.50 and was handed down like an heirloom. The smell of fresh ground meat and sage filled the whole house. When supermarkets sold ground beef in neat plastic trays, the grinder lost its place at the table, retired to a barn shelf, heavy and orphaned. Number 16. The lard can. Tucked in the pantry sat a tall tin can, often 5 gallons, full of snow white, rendered lard from the family hog. Lard was the fat that fried the eggs, shortened the pie crust, and greased the bread pans, and one autumn butchering filled the can for the whole year. A farm wife judged her own skill by how pure and white her lard turned out. The can cost almost nothing and was refilled every fall. When vegetable shortening in a blue can and oil in a bottle claimed to be cleaner and healthier, the lard can emptied for good, taking with it the flakiest pie crust most kitchens ever made. Number 15. The cream separator. Standing in the corner like a small machine from a factory was the hand-cranked cream separator, a tall steel column with a wide bowl on top and 2 spouts below. Fresh milk poured in the top, and as the farm wife cranked it to a hum, centrifugal force split the milk in 2, skim out one spout, rich cream out the other. The cream became butter and money. The skim fed the calves and the pigs. A separator was a serious purchase, but it paid for itself in a season. Disassembling and scalding all those discs was a daily chore. When the milkman and the creamery took over, the separator went silent forever. Number 14. The butter churn. This was the one in nearly every farmhouse that you would struggle to name today. A tall stoneware crock or a wooden barrel with a wooden plunger called a dash, poking through the lid. The farm wife or a tired child worked that dash up and down, sometimes for 40 minutes, until the cream broke and golden butter gathered on top. It was pressed into a carved mold and stamped with a leaf or a cow before going to the spring house to cool. A churn cost a couple of dollars and ran on patience alone. Store butter in waxed cartons made churning a memory, and the dash churn became a porch decoration holding umbrellas. Number 13. The PIE safe. Standing against the wall was a tall wooden cabinet with door panels of punched tin pierced in patterns of stars, hearts, or eagles. Those holes let air move so fresh-baked pies and cooling bread wouldn't mold, while keeping flies, mice, and curious children out of the goods. A farm wife might cool 6 pies at once in there before a threshing dinner. The punched tin patterns were often the prettiest thing in the kitchen. A pie safe was furniture, built to last 100 years. The refrigerator made its airy shelves obsolete, and today the pie safe sells as folk art, admired for its tin and forgotten for its work. Number 12. The Hoosier Cabinet. The pride of the kitchen was the freestanding Hoosier cabinet, a tall workstation with a pull-out porcelain counter, deep drawers, and best of all, a built-in flour bin with a sifter cranked right at the bottom. The farm wife could measure flour, sift it, and roll out biscuits without taking a single step. Many had a sugar jar, spice rack, and a chart of measurements printed inside the door. A Hoosier cost around $25 new, a real investment. It was the original all-in-one kitchen. When builders started lining walls with fixed cabinets and countertops, the standalone Hoosier was pushed to the porch, and an entire way of working disappeared with it. Number 11. Enamelware. Every farm kitchen shimmered with enamelware, also called graniteware, the speckled blue or gray steel coated in glassy enamel. The coffee pot, the dishpan, the wash basin, the big roasting pan, the pie plates, all of it was light, cheap, and could go straight onto the cook stove or out to the well. A whole set cost a few dollars from the catalog. It chipped where it was dropped, showing the dark steel beneath, and every farm wife knew her own dented coffee pot by sight. When stainless steel and aluminum arrived, the speckled ware lost favor fast, traded away by the boxful, now hunted by collectors at 20 times its old price. Number 10. The percolator coffee pot. On the back of the stove sat the tall percolator, a metal pot with a glass knob on the lid where you watch the coffee bloom. Water boiled up a center tube and rained them down through a basket of grounds, around and around, until the brew ran dark and the whole kitchen smelled like morning. The farm wife judged it done by the color in that little glass bubble. A stovetop percolator cost a couple of dollars and never needed a filter or a pod. That bubbling, gurgling sound was the alarm clock of the farm. Automatic drip machines pushed it aside in the 1970s, and the percolator's cheerful gurgle went quiet. Number 9. The kerosene lamp. Many farms didn't see electric light until the Rural Electrification Administration reached them. So deep into the 1950s, the kitchen still glowed by kerosene lamp. Each evening, the farm wife trimmed the wick, polished the soot off the glass chimney, and filled the brass font, and that warm yellow flame lit supper and homework alike. A good lamp cost about $1, and kerosene came by the can. The soft light and faint oily smell were the texture of every farm night. When the power lines finally arrived and a bulb hung from the ceiling, the lamps were set on a high shelf for storms, then forgotten when the storms passed. Number 8. Mason jars with zinc lids. Lining the cellar shelves stood hundreds of glass jars, sealed not with the modern two-piece lid, but with a zinc screw cap and a red rubber ring. Each spring and summer, the farm wife filled them with green beans, tomatoes, peaches, and pickles, the whole year's eating put up by hand. A case of jars cost about 60 cents, and the rings were peeled off, washed, and reused until they cracked. A full cellar was a family's insurance against winter. The bright two-piece lid and the freezer eventually replaced the zinc cap, and those old jars with their rubber rings now hold buttons and nails, prized more for their glass than their seal. Number 7. The pressure canner. The heavy aluminum pressure canner was the most important tool in the kitchen come August. A thick pot with a clamped lid and a little gauge that rocked and hissed on top. Inside, jars of beans and meat were heated under steam pressure, hot enough to keep them safe on a shelf all winter without a refrigerator in sight. The farm wife watched that gauge like a hawk, knowing the difference between a full pantry and a spoiled one. A canner cost around $15, a major buy that paid for itself many times. As freezers and cheap store cans spread, the great canning marathons faded, and the heavy pot gathered dust in the basement. Number 6. The icebox. Before the electric refrigerator reached the countryside, the kitchen cooled its food in a wooden icebox lined with tin with a real block of ice in the top compartment. The iceman delivered a fresh block once or twice a week, and a pan underneath caught the meltwater that somebody always forgot to empty until it overflowed. An icebox cost around $10, and the ice itself was a steady expense. It kept milk and butter cool, but barely, and nothing froze. When the humming electric refrigerator arrived, the wooden icebox was hauled to the barn for storing tools, a relic of a colder, slower way of keeping food. Number 5. The pressure cooker. Not the canner, but its smaller cousin sitting on a front burner most weeknights, the everyday pressure cooker. A farm wife could take a tough, cheap cut of beef or a mess of dried beans and have them falling apart tender in under an hour, when an oven would have taken half a day and a load of precious fuel. The pot rocked and whistled and filled the kitchen with the smell of supper while she finished the chores. A cooker cost a few dollars and saved both time and money. Slow cookers and microwaves promised easier dinners, and the rocking, hissing pressure cooker was packed away, scaring a generation that forgot how to use it. Number 4. The cast iron skillet. Black, heavy, and older than anyone at the table, the cast iron skillet was the workhorse of the farm kitchen. It fried the morning eggs and bacon, baked the cornbread, browned the chicken, and made the gravy, all on the same surface that had been seasoned by 50 years of fat and never, ever touched soap. A new skillet cost about $1, but the good ones were inherited, the seasoning a family treasure. A farm wife knew exactly which spot ran hottest. Lightweight non-stick pans with their colored coatings made cast iron seem old-fashioned for a while, until people remembered that nothing else cooks the same, or lasts 100 years. Number 3. The grease can. Right at the back of the stove, within easy reach, sat a coffee can or a little lidded crock half full of bacon drippings, the most useful fat in the house. Every time the farm wife fried bacon or sausage, she poured the hot grease through a strainer into that can, and it kept for weeks without spoiling. A spoonful flavored the green beans, fried the potatoes, popped the corn, and greased the griddle. It cost nothing because it was a byproduct of breakfast, and throwing it out was unthinkable. That can carry the taste of every meal forward into the next. Cooking oil bottles and worries about fat sent the grease can to the trash, taking a whole layer of flavor with it. Number 2. The flour and feed sack. This was the cheapest thing in the kitchen, and maybe the cleverest, the cotton sack that flour, sugar, and chicken feed came in. The mills printed those sacks in bright florals and ginghams on purpose, knowing the farm wife would empty them, bleach out the stitching, and sew them into dresses, aprons, dish towels, and curtains. A family could clothe its children out of the feed store. Nothing was bought to be thrown away. Even the string that closed the sack was saved. When paper and plastic bags replaced cloth in the 1960s, that quiet thrift ended, and a whole homemade wardrobe disappeared from the American farmhouse. And finally, number 1, the wood-burning cook stove. Everything else in this kitchen orbited around the great cast iron range that stood against the wall. The single object, the whole room was built to serve. It cooked every meal, heated every drop of water, dried the mittens, warmed the kitchen, and on a cold morning, it was the first thing lit and the last thing banked at night. The farm wife learned its temperament by hand, knowing how much wood made a hot oven for bread and how little kept a pot at a simmer. A range cost $25 or more and lasted a lifetime of fires. It had a warming shelf up top and a reservoir on the side that always held hot water. When gas and electric ranges arrived with their clean, instant heat, the great wood stove went cold for good, and with it went the true heart of the farm kitchen, the fire that the whole house once gathered around. So there they are, 30 things every farm kitchen once held that almost no one owns today. Each one tells the same quiet story of thrift, skill, and a time when a kitchen ran on muscle and fire instead of plugs and packaging. Which of these did your grandmother have? Did your family keep the cast iron, the grease can, or maybe the old butter churn out on the porch? Tell me in the comments, because I'd bet at least one of these is sitting in your attic right now, waiting to be remembered.